The first bill on the agenda is House File 3296. Representative Mecklin, would you like to move House File 3296 for Representative Gilman as she comes up to the stand? Representative Mecklin. What's it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What are we doing with this one?
Oh, just move the bill,
I'd like to
Representative
move
Mecklin.
House File 3296, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you. Representative Mecklin moves House File 96, sorry. I got my, Representative Mecklin moves that House File 3296 be put before the committee. Representative Gilman, do you have any amendments or anything that you'd like to discuss really quickly that might be on your bill, or talk about your bill, to your bill?
Thank you, Chair Swedinski. I do have an author's amendment, and there also is a DE as well.
All right. I move the DE amendment for Representative Gilman to get in the bill in the shape that she would like. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Representative Gilman, to your bill as amended.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me today. So the issue addressed in House File 3296 as amended was first brought to my attention toward the end of the 2025 legislative session by a constituent, Dave Meyer of Glencoe, Minnesota. He works for Glencoe Light and Power. And again, Glencoe is in the heartbeat of my district, and so I'm happy he's here today. So Glencoe is home to one of, if not the first crypto-based data mining center operations in the state. While working with this data mining company, Glencoe quickly realized that the electrical load of the operation could rival that the utility's entire remaining, could use up the remaining base load. While able and willing to serve the operation, the one challenge that concerned the utility was the impact such a massive load would have on the efficiency, conservation, and optimization plan, the ECO plan. A municipal utility such as Glencoe is required to find usage offsets equal to at least 1.5% of their gross annual retail sales of electricity, with a finite number of options as to how to find sufficient offsets. Adding 1.5% of sales to the data mining operation was not a very feasible option. Therefore, in 2024, the legislature carved out a limited exemption from counting electric sales to crypto-based data mining operations if said operation increased the utility's baseload by 40% or more. Now a similar issue has arisen, and on an even more extreme scale, regarding data centers. House File 3296 simply seeks to extend the same exemption from the calculating of gross annual sales to data centers as is currently provided to crypto-based data mining. The threshold remains at an increase of 40% or more to the base sales. The ECO goal for subjected sales remains 1.5%. The definition of data center is consistent with the use of term in Data Center Act approved by this body in the first special session of 2025. The bill simply provides a common sense relief protecting utilities from ultimately being penalized for not being able to meet an unattainable goal. If Minnesota wants to remain a leader in technology, such as AI, passing House File 3296 is critically important. Now I'd like to turn things over to my testifier, who will further clarify and demonstrate the need to approve House File 3296.
All right. If you have testifiers there, if you want to introduce yourself to the committee, and we'd look forward to hearing from your testimony.
Certainly. As indicated, my name is David Meyer. I'm the General Manager for the Glencoe Light and Power Commission in Glencoe, Minnesota. Glencoe Light and Power was fortunate a few years ago to have a crypto mining operation seek service in our service territory. It's gone really well, but one of the problems that we noticed right away is that the CIP program, as it started out back in the 80s, the Conservation Improvement Program, has evolved to the ECO program. In the ECO program, a utility like ours, and any other utility in the state, needs to show savings of kilowatt hours in the amount of 1.5% of your gross sales in the previous average of the 3 years. In Glencoe's case, that 1.5%, I'm rounding some numbers just because I have exacts, but I just want to round them. In Glencoe's case, our native load uses approximately 80 million kilowatt hours of energy a year, or sells approximately 80 million kilowatt hours. I realize that these numbers may or may not mean a lot to people, but the numbers will. With that 80 million, that means that each year we need to show savings of 1.2 million kilowatt hours in any given year, and we have to do that every year. By adding this crypto mining operation, that number changes from 1.2 million to 3.1 million because of the volume of sales to the crypto operation. So we have 2,944 customers, and we can utilize the savings that they see from our programs to save 1.2 million customers, or if we add one more customer, it goes to 3.1 million kilowatt hours. That's where the problem lies, and that's why we seek to have this language put in here.
All right, thank you, Mr. Minor. Do you have any other testifiers before? If you want to introduce yourself to the committee.
Chair Swazinski, members of the committee. I'm Ken Sewell, Director of Government Relations and Senior Counsel for the Minnesota Municipal Utilities Association, and we wanted to thank Representative Gilman for bringing this bill, and just to reassure everybody that it is a tightly drafted bill that's intended to deal with the situations that are the getcha in between type data centers that are out there that are too small to get all the reliefs that are covered in other legislation, but they're causing enough problems for the local communities that we need some help, and that's why this bill came before you. That I'll just be here for any questions.
All right. Are there any questions for the testifiers? All right. We also have, thank you. If just stick close in case anyone does have a question for you. We also have Sarah Wolf in hand if you want to come to the testifying table. And please introduce yourself to the committee and grab a chair, and we'd like to hear from you.
Good afternoon, Chair Swazinski, Co-Chair Acom, members of the committee, Representative Gilman, and thank you so much. I'd like to say my name is Sarah Wolf, and I'm with Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light, and I do not do the excellent job of providing electric service to the utility that the Glencoe Light and Power does. So thank you for the work you do. Thank you for the work you do also to help your customers find those efficiencies with that eco goal every year. I know that's a lot, and that saves your customers money. So thanks for that work. We've all learned a lot in the last year about data centers and the impact they are having on our grid and our electricity demand. And I just wanted to offer that in this moment of rising electric rates and growing demand, efficiency measures like those asked of in ECO do and can play even more a really significant role in both A, saving consumers money, and B, creating capacity on the grid. So for instance, replacing an inefficient electric resistance heating system with a highly efficient air source heat pump does both of those things. A Rewiring America analysis shows that this kind of home improvement, which would then both heat a home and cool a home, would save the homeowner $1,975 on average a year in electricity costs. That's how much electricity it saves. So today is exactly the time to be doubling down on finding these efficiencies, especially because we face the growing electricity demand from data centers and the new challenges to grid stability that this brings. The exemption rationale that we've had, perhaps pertinent to these other large facilities because they had little scope to reduce their energy, isn't as applicable when we see our homes not just as consumers, but as active participants in resilient energy infrastructure. And entities like data centers that do and will need so much from this infrastructure should be adding to and not detracting from these efforts in all the ways that are possible. So thank you so much for this opportunity to share this with you today.
All right, thank you. Are there any any more questions? Any folks from the public that would like to make a comment on House File 3296 as amended? You know, I maybe have a general question. Mr. Meyer, would you want to come back to the stand?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Meyer. Just kind of a general question. So, you know, as the testifying, was stated that, obviously SIP does some work when it comes to energy efficiency. In your discussions with developers and some of the discussions around that, is there a lot of efficiencies that you'll be able to find with a potential site like this, whether it's a data center or a crypto mining facility? Do they seem like there's a lot of room for efficiencies within the current SIP mandates?
No, unfortunately, that's what creates the problem, is that data centers, crypto mining, anything like that, their most expensive commodity is the electricity they consume. So they tend to build their facilities right out of the gate as efficient as they can. So we can't really go after efficiencies there, which makes it really difficult to try and find that savings.
Sounds good. So, Mr. Meyer, would you say that, so if you have a large user, which sometimes is as big as the rest of your grid, so if you're maintaining, like you said, what was it, 80,000?
80 million?
80 million, and your estimation was that it would be doubling that potentially, or what would it be from a load perspective?
Actually, in our case, it's more than that.
Yeah.
The provisions in the bill indicate that the facility has to increase your demand by over 40% of your native load, if you will. In our case, our native load is approximately 75 to 80 million kilowatt hours. This facility uses 146 million. So it literally takes our town and makes it 3 times as big in consumption.
Certainly, certainly. And so, as talks have happened, as those conversations are happening with that increased load, how will that operate? So as you're selling more electricity within your service territory, will that help with maintaining? So if you have a single large user, a large industrial user, whatever that might be, will that help maintain the rest of the grid? So for grid sustainability throughout the rest of the grid, so like the maintenance and the things, will that allow you to potentially have more resources that will help lower the cost for other ratepayers when it comes to kind of that maintenance and upkeep and buying new transmission and poles and things like that?
Absolutely. In our case, our Board of Commissioners, myself, before we ever brought this customer in, we made a promise to ourselves that it would never adversely affect our native load. So it has not. And the revenue stream from this additional facility, we've actually utilized that to decrease rates for our customers, for the rest of our customers.
Sounds good. What percentage, what ability have you been, like, do you have some numbers there in your ability to decrease rates for the rest of your customers?
So we calculate a power cost adjustment each month as a practice, where we literally take our cost of energy and our total energy purchased and calculate how much that energy cost us. What we do right now is take that cost of energy, and instead of using that whole value as compared to the energy sold or energy purchased to come up with that cost, that power cost adjustment, we actually artificially buy down that power cost adjustment by $40,000. So if you buy X amount of kilowatt hours at $300,000, instead of dividing by 300,000, we're dividing by 260. So we've been doing that since this facility came on board. So it has lowered costs. The revenues from this facility have assisted in lowering costs for all of our customers.
Sounds good. Have you, thank you, Mr. Meyer. Have you done any calculations? So you did kind of in that that little snapshot, have you kind of done a total cost savings from by having, the benefit of having a large user like this within your jurisdiction, like what has been that total savings over time since they've been in operation?
I have not done a full calculation of the total savings.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds like we may have some other questions. Representative Acom?
Thank you,
Or
Mr.
Chair
Chair.
Acom, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Representative Gilman. Welcome to committee.
Thank you.
And to the testifier, I just have a couple of questions. I know crypto can sometimes be somewhat of a transient operation. Is there a long-term contract with this particular customer?
Mr. Meyer?
Yes, ma'am. We entered into a 3-year agreement. That's been extended another 3 years. Obviously, there's off-ramp provisions. In our case, the customer has been a stable customer. And quite frankly, right now, we're looking at the possibility of expanding from crypto. They have a desire to expand into AI. And we
Representative-
are exploring
sorry.
those options right now.
Great, thank you.
Representative Acom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I will just say that, I worked hard on the data center bill, as did many last year, and we built in an exemption for the hyperscale data centers, similar to large industrial users, in part because of the benefit, the community benefit program that we built into the data center package. And so that community benefit program, which provides weatherization and energy efficiency based on what size of data center that there is, back into the state. So recognizing that overall energy efficiency is an important goal that we need to be working on and continuing to improve, that at the time when maybe generation or the demand because of data centers or crypto is adding more draw or more load, we want to make sure we're offsetting that by energy efficiency within the state. So I have some concerns because of the impact of that, recognizing why we did it for the larger industrial customers, that maybe there needs to be some sort of a balancing on the other side. And there's also I guess I'm just learning, I was getting a little information that some large users that are over 20 megawatts can apply for an exemption already, which maybe that needs to be looked at rather than what we're proposing here. So I think that I have some concerns about some of it. I think this is going to be laid over, so I think there's some opportunities to continue to work on this. And so those are just some of my comments for now.
Sounds good. I don't think there's a question there. Mr. Meyer, do you have a reply to that, or?
As a matter of fact, I do. The issue of the 20 megawatt number that you've indicated, that's been around for a long time. The problem we run into here is that Glencoe's native load, its whole native load is only 20 megawatts. Some of my colleagues that are looking at bringing in facilities like this, their whole town might have a 10 megawatt load. They might look to add a 10 megawatt data center, which will triple their energy consumption and triple their conservation improvement program requirement, then not get anywhere near that 20 megawatt number. That 20 megawatt number is significant for a large utility that has extremely large industries coming in, but we're looking at an incremental impact on a smaller utility. And that's where the concerns came from.
Representative Acom? Representative Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to go a little bit more off of the, the savings to your customers, when you do that, is it costing you any more to do that, or are you still able to come out about the same in terms of your profitability?
As far as meeting the savings?
Yes, Mr. Meyer?
Yeah,
I'm
by
sorry.
giving savings on that bill to customers.
Mr. Meyer?
So our requirement is to show energy conservation in the amount of 1.5% of the consumption. The way we do that is by doing rebates. Every time we pay a customer a rebate, that's how we prove that energy was saved. In simple terms, if you go buy a 10-watt LED light bulb to replace your 100-watt, and we give you a rebate on that light bulb, we just saved 90 watts of electricity. So every measure that our customers use in energy efficiency where they apply for rebates, we use those numbers to calculate out and show how much savings we've created and how much we've saved our customers. The inherent problem with this is with a customer of the scale of a crypto miner or a data center that has a high load factor, which means they're using electricity 24/7 all the time. That goal of, instead of saving 1.2 million a year and changing it to 3.1 a year is quite frankly unattainable, because the next year you have to do it again. And the next year you have to do it again. So I don't know if that answers your question all the way, but it's a complicated issue. I've only been dealing with it for, I don't know, 36 years.
No.
Representative Murphy.
I guess the thing I was getting at is, you mentioned that there was some kind of monthly adjustment. I was just wondering, as a percentage, what does it look like? Just to give us a little bit understanding how this could all work. So as a percentage on your monthly bill, what have you seen? You said it went down a little bit. What is an estimate of that percentage?
Mr. Meyer.
Buying down the power cost adjustment by that $40,000 each month, it's probably half a cent a kilowatt hour per customer, and at an 8-cent base rate. So a half a cent on 8 cents.
Great, thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Ms. Representative Gilman, excuse me.
Thank you.
A few questions. First, did you say your base load, or your native load is 20 megawatts? So that, but you also said you had 80 megawatts. Can you tell me,
Mr.
describe
Meyer.
that number?
So in the electrical world, there's your demand, your capacity, and it's the energy you consume. So our peak demand on our system, at its highest point, it is drawing 20 megawatts of power from the grid. The culmination over time of that energy is where you come up with the 80 million kilowatt hours per year.
Got it.
Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate that. So you also mentioned that you have a 3-year contract with this. In the context of a load that seems to dwarf the amount of energy that you sell to non-data center customers, that doesn't seem like a very long time to me. I mean, if they were to go away in 3 years and you've set up an infrastructure to support them, won't that hurt you?
Mr. Meyer.
In our case, the cost of building out the infrastructure was borne by the customer.
Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, that makes, kudos to you, makes a lot of sense. Here's my concern, I guess. I certainly understand your issue of this load dwarfing your other load, and where do you find energy efficiency opportunities. But can't data centers get more energy efficient over time?
Mr. Meyer.
Quite frankly, in working with our data center, they are so in tune to their energy costs that they've implemented every efficiency measure that they can. They have variable frequency drives on all of their fans. They are turning things down when they can. Literally, if there's an energy savings to be found in their facility, we haven't found any more.
Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In a prior life, I used to sell into data centers or people. So I have no doubt that you're correct in terms of backward looking into when they put it in. But data center technology has been changing and growing. And you're right, like energy is such a huge focus for them. They are going to continue to try to squeeze out everything they can. And I've seen data centers over time swap out CPUs, change their cooling approaches, all kinds of things. So my concern with this is saying, okay, you've done what you can, and we're not going to ask you to do any more when we're asking others to do more. So that's my concern, is that I think we should still be requiring these folks, as technology progresses, to continue to try to create energy efficiency in their operations. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I could just comment to that too, Representative Kraft. You know, I think there are different technologies that use different amounts of energy. You know, if this body wanted to pass a law so that data centers would use less energy, they would ask them to use open water cooling systems. So they would either draw from the ground or use open water system. If you wanted to use less electricity off the bat, those technologies do that. What uses more energy is closed loop systems, but they don't use water. So there's always that trade-off. So you have either a chilling system that uses refrigerant from a water closed loop system, which is maybe less water but more energy. And then you have the other side, which would be maybe using groundwater or river water that would potentially use less energy because you're not using chillers, you use an ambient temperature water throughout the year. That changes the dynamic on how much energy is used. So there are technologies, and from, you talked a little bit about it from a CPU standpoint, depending on what type of technology is being used within the industry, whether it's a crypto or whether it's a data, that technology is changing quite drastically, and that's why the sales tax, this is obviously not tax committee, but that's why the sales tax exemption was so important to pass last year, is because of the oftentimes how the data centers re-up and refill. So essentially they got their data center every, I think it's 3 or 5 or 8 years. They take all the equipment out and replace it with new upgraded modern facilities, and that's super important. But that's not necessarily this bill, and it'd be hard to track that. And I think what they're trying to do is understanding what that base load is of that data center, so that those costs aren't being borne for kids, because it is a cost. That 1.5% SIP mandate is a cost across the board to ratepayers. And as we're looking to drive down the cost of electricity, that's 1.5% that they're having to spend to find technology, to give rebates, to spend in areas that if we took away that would also potentially allow other dollars to be kept in people's pockets and not redeployed into other assets. Representative Kraft.
Mr. Chair, well, one, I think you made my point for me, because you talked about them swapping out CPUs every 5 to 8 years to increase efficiency. They are going to keep working on it, regardless of the starting point, whether it's water-cooled or air-cooled, or as you talk about. I'm not debating that. We can talk about water and air and the other impacts there, but I'm talking about, shouldn't we be wanting them to get more energy efficient? And then your point about cost, well, I mean, energy efficiency is doing more with less. So the focus behind that is to lower costs over time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions for the testifiers? Any questions for Representative Gilman? All right. We also just want to thank you guys for coming before the committee. I think we're ready to go. Representative Gilman, thank you. The bill is laid on the table.
Thanks.
No, laid over. Sorry.
Okay, I was like, it's late on the
All right. Thank you.